Okay, I wanted to take a little bit of time today and discuss artificial intelligence and its use in different industries. There's a lot of people wanting to go and say, no AI ever, that's it, we're done, we're not going to touch it. Look, Hollywood writer strike fixed it, right? They're not going to use it. But really, the writers didn't want to ban the use of AI. What they did was they said it can't get a credit. You can't say, hey, look, the AI wrote this and haha, that's it, right? So they wanted to be able to be part of that process, and there was some sort of middle ground that said, hey, look, I'm a writer. Let's pretend I am. Okay, I've written some books, but I've not had a screenplay produced. But let's pretend I have, and I've got a new one, and I'm taking it to Paramount or whoever. And I say, I came up with this idea for write a screenplay, and here you go. Here it is. It doesn't say I can't use AI as part of that process. It doesn't say I can't go off and use AI in part of my creative process to produce this new screenplay. Now I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but the AI cheats and it pulls data from people who are no longer being paid. Okay, let's think about this for a second. So what generative AI does is it goes out to the whole of humanity and piles a bunch of stuff in one spot and says, hey, I'm going to write like this. You are starting to see some AIs that are trained to write like specific people. For instance, there was an AI generated George Carlin comedy bit running around for a while that was actually pretty funny and kind of sounded a lot like George Carlin wrote it. Was it exactly like George Carlin? Well, no, it wasn't. But George Carlin has enough of a body of work, and AI is getting good enough. You can kind of train it to be him. I think it was taken down for a couple of reasons, which are obvious, right? But it because it used an AI generated George Carlin voice, and yada yada yada. So, but it's not saying AI can't be used. It's not saying AI can't be part of that process. At least not in the versions that I've read. Um, if somebody has a version of it that says something else, I've read about 20 articles on this. I think I'm right. But if somebody has a reference that says I'm wrong, please provide the reference, not just a rant and a rave. But what generative AI does is it trains from large bodies of sources. And I'm going to contend something that people may not like. It's kind of the same thing as going to art school or creative writing school, or people tell you, hey, to be a good writer, you need to be an avid reader. And that's kind of true, right? Most of the best writers are fairly avid readers. Most of the best artists spend a lot of time looking at other people's art. And do they learn nothing from that? Of course they learn something from that. They get inspiration from it. They go off and do something themselves. So I think what you're going to see in the future is artists using AI as a tool, but not necessarily using it as the only thing. So like when I use generative AI and I've got access to all the latest ones from just about every corner of the globe, if I say, hey, write me 800 words on this, it still needs editing, right? It still needs a lot of, it has some ideas, it has some flow, but it has some problems, right? So you still have to go in and kind of fix it. It's a really decent first draft, but it's not really what you want to use as a final draft. And if you think about it from the perspective of writing and writing teams historically, or art and art teams, does the head writer go off and do the final draft, or do they hand it to an intern and say, here, write me 2,000 characters on whatever, right? And then it's sort of, there's where the idea starts. Now you don't have a blank sheet of paper. It goes through 12 other people and you get a final copy. So there's a large thing in the role-playing game community that says, no art ever, or I boycott, and that's it, we're done, blah, blah, blah. Nope, you can't have one written by AI, and TSR, or sorry, Hasbro is now out trying to mine the TSR stuff that they've did for years, and then mine the Wizards of the Coast stuff to produce new adventure games and new artwork for using AI. They're looking to the possibility of that because they can mine their own stuff. They own the intellectual property. Yes, other people did it originally. They own the IP. It is theirs to data mine legally. Is it right? Is it wrong? Different discussion. Legally, it's their right to go do it. Now, is that going to go away? I see a lot of people saying, oh, we should just disallow it, regulate it. When was the last time you could ever uninvent something? The other thing I want to point out, and this is not going to be popular, is every time a new tool or a new invention comes up, everybody says the sky is falling and the world's going to come to an end and we're not going to rotate on our axis and the poles are going to flip and Manson will come back to life and all kinds of bad things will happen and we'll run out of Cheetos and no longer be able to have Jack Russell Terriers because they'll all have disappeared. Um, that's not going to be the end of the world. What it might be is it will impact the the ability of some people to make a living in the creative, in the writing and art space. I can news for you, it has already impacted the ability of technical people to make a living, because I can now today, as a CTO, which I am in my day job, I can now today produce stuff, produce systems, produce apps, produce software with far fewer people than it took 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And that's because of open source software. It's because of AI. It's because of all the tools we have today. I can produce stuff for you, the consumer, to use in a much faster amount of time with far fewer people than I could just 5 or 10 years ago. Here's what that means for you. It costs less for you to purchase it, because my costs are not as sky high as they were. Now, will that impact the AI? Will that impact the ability of some people to make some money? Probably will. But this is a tale as old as time. It's a new tool, and it's going to have that impact. I don't see a way you can uninvent it. Um, I'd love to have this discussion with some of the community out there. I'd love to do some live streams, maybe some videos we could put on my YouTube, spread around on my Twitter. But AI is a tool, and it's not going away anytime soon. And educating the AI is, in my opinion, not that much different than going to art school or going to creative writing school. And if you restrict the way you educate your AI to things that are public domain, and not copyrighted by somebody, I think there's a lot of usefulness to that tool, because let's face it, art's been around for thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever you want to call it. We can pull data from stuff that is no longer copyrighted, and we can use the AI to train that way. Do I want to go off and say, hey, Jeff Easley, thanks for producing that, I'm going to throw it in my AI right now? Too bad, right? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about stuff that is already public domain, or if a company or the owner of that IP wants to use that to train their AI model to produce new art, you're using something you own anyway. Where's the harm in that? It's really just a new tool. So let's have that discussion, but let's do it factually, and let's not do it emotionally. Okay. Let's do it from a, hey, how is this really going to impact the industry? How is this really going to impact certain people? And how is that different from when we went from horse-drawn buggies to automobiles, right? It's really a tool. That's all it is. It's how we use that tool, and how we use that tool ethically, that makes the big difference. So let's have the discussion, okay? Let's consider this step one of 95 before we all reach consensus on it, but I'm happy to lead that discussion as somebody who works in the industry and has an interest in role-playing games and books and movies. So everybody have a great day. Click like, subscribe, click unlike, yell at me, scream at me, whatever you want to do. But let's have the discussion from the standpoint of facts, not what you want to have be true, because it's not ever going to be 1988 again. It's not ever going to be 1975 again. It's just not. So we have to live in the reality we have today. Let's try to do that.